Hey, everybody. You're listening to the Mixed Nuts Podcast. I'm Phil Hirsch, along with my pal Richard Marks, here to discuss what's going on in this mixed up world. So relax and sit back, grab a beverage, and a handful of mixed nuts. No telling where the conversation may go. Follow us on all social media and our YouTube channel, Mixed Nuts Nation. You have to be crazy to listen.
Aloha. There we go. Didn't want to forget to say that this time. Hi, everybody. It's Rich here at the Mixed Nuts Nation podcast. We're on the road again. Last week we were down in Boca Raton, last episode with Phil in studio. Today I am flying solo here. I am in the great state of Hawaii, the 50th state, Hawaii 5-0, all that good stuff. And here to just kind of recant a little bit of what's been going on the last couple of days, some of the things we've done, and my opinions or views of what I find here 20 years later. I was here back in 2006, although I wasn't here, meaning Oahu. I was on the Big Island visiting a friend, our friend expat Doug, who we've shown on the podcast the last few weeks. Still hoping to get Doug on to just give his impressions of life in general and his time in Hawaii and other places. But it's been really a wonderful time here so far. The weather is absolutely fantastic. Funny, having spent the better part of 5 days down in Boca Raton earlier this month with the temperatures every day hitting the low 90s and the humidity levels seem like normal summertime in Florida, rainy season, humidity levels up in the 80s and maybe it's pushing closer to 90 a couple of days. Pretty oppressive heat. I mean, you really can't walk around in any kind of comfort at all. And there's, and it seems like there's very, very little overhead, like of a canopy to walk under. Where here, I have to say, in Hawaii, there are so many areas where you have these really mature trees, these like groves of trees that have like just really distinctive looking, what do you want to call them? They're like large umbrella style canopies that just throw off so much shade that the temperatures here really are no higher than 85, 86 degrees. But I dare say there's like a cool ocean breeze that's almost always blowing. In fact, you could probably see in the background here the beautiful view of the Pacific Ocean heading out west towards, Asia. We're on the western tip of Oahu here. We're in Ko Alina. Amazing complex here of large, I guess these are timeshares and condo rentals, beautiful beaches they built in here. It's some coves and all these amazing water park features, but a very big place for to bring the family and kids. They're really seem to be having a great time down there. And for it being the middle of July, I mean, my goodness, I thought it was going to be swelteringly hot here. And it's really not. It's wonderfully comfortable. I mean, you can really see why people move here or have second homes here if they can pay the freight, so to speak, because it ain't cheap, folks. So, but all that aside, our first major day here at on Oahu. I've been here twice before, and I was remiss in that. Well, when I was here the first time, I was a young man. I was in my early 20s, and really the two folks that I was here with, one being expat Doug, and another guy. Our goal here when we went to Hawaii was what most 21-year-old red-blooded males' goal is to do, and one thing that we did not get around to doing was going to visit the Arizona and the Pearl Harbor Memorial that is probably one of the, if not the largest, I don't want to say tourist, because it's not really a tourist mecca. It's more for paying tribute and the solemnity, there we go, of the occasion to be here and to just pay, bear witness to history. And so what I've prepared here with the help of my amazing producer, Miles Mendez, is we put together a kind of like a video, um, let's say a tribute and some ways for the people that will watch this on YouTube can appreciate. Obviously, all our Apple and iHeartRadio, and hopefully someday again Spotify. We don't know really what's going on there, but we've been off Spotify a couple of weeks. But nevertheless, our downloads have been surging. We're almost at triple figures per week now, which is really a lot for us considering, we're just a garage podcast here, but we're actually slowly but surely gaining traction. There's that deadly word again, traction. So just to start off, let's start the presentation here with first photo that I wanted to talk about, which is kind of like an iconic picture here that I'm sure Miles is busy loading up here. And yeah, so that is a shot across the bay of the ultimate destination of our tour. That is the U.S.S. Arizona. That is the memorial platform that they've built and has been there for many, many a year. And that actually is set up perpendicular to the ship that has been submerged all these years. And something that, before you go out on the trip out there, and we'll play a video of that in a minute or two, that there is a really amazing bit of history written out and spelled out through this walkthrough museum that they have set up there while you wait to get on your boats. And you kind of can see some of the you want to say the spirits of the times and the mindset of the population and things going on in the world that led up to all these events that transpired. I mean, there's obviously the events of the day and all that stuff we can get into, but there is a lot of tribute and a lot, and to the credit of the National Park Service, having been a student of history myself, and probably for the last I'd say 20 years, really done a lot of deep dives into a lot of stuff that people generally don't take much interest in, but it's something that call like a hobby. I've really taken into learning the origins of so many of the things that we accept as just normal course of events. And you wonder, well, why is this happening there? Why did this happen there? Why is there a war here and a war there? And all that. And you start to dig down and you find the origins of things, and they're not always what you thought they were. And sometimes they're the complete opposite. They're distortions that are done through history, whether it's propaganda, governments trying to just like twist messages to fit their agendas. Once you kind of grow up a bit, you don't get as easily swayed by all the bullshit that's thrown away. I was there, and I'm reading some of the depictions of some of the justifications of why all these countries were kind of going to war. And we'll just go to the next slide there, which is kind of like a something that I thought was a very interesting thing to take a picture of. We'll see this in a second here. This is slide number 2. It's an interesting picture of just it's right on the gate or the entrance of the exhibit, and it says "Road to War." And I found that to be kind of a short and sweet, very, very just 3 words. But you see that, and you walk in there, and it's like you go through multiple exhibit, and it shows you everything from things like natural resources, the politics of the time, kind of the retreating imperial empires of Britain and France and the Dutch that all had amazing influence throughout the South Pacific through all those hundreds of years. And as these other nations were rising up and kind of feeling their own nationalism, Japan, of course, I'm speaking of, they were their whole mindset had changed from being a country that was somewhat isolated, unlike China, which was really just totally taken over and run by the British for all those years. Japan was mostly its own empire and kind of existed on its own. And then all of a sudden, they started to have a change in their politics, and they became very kind of expansionist, and they wanted to broaden the Japanese empire through all these islands, through all the, you figure from everything from, you know, you want to say the Philippines all the way across to, maybe they never had their sights necessarily set on taking over Hawaii, but Hawaii, of course, was within their reach with their battleships and their carriers to launch those planes on that fateful day. And it was a way of sort of saying, this is our perimeter that we want you to stay at. This is our part of the world now. We own this part of the world. Stay the hell out. And so they attacked us basically after we cut off like 80% of their oil. And they said that was it. And did we know that they were going to attack us? Probably. There's a lot of intelligence all these years later that show that we kind of knew it was coming. And in some weird way, we wanted it to happen. Kind of like you want to say a false flag event to get us into the war, because at the time that Pearl Harbor happened, Hitler was already marching through Europe and bombing England and invading France, and that whole thing was going down. And all we were doing was like basically lending them money, sending them equipment, sending them ships, sending them weapons, ammunition. We hadn't sent any troops yet because we hadn't officially declared war. And there was a lot of people that, many famous people like Lindbergh, for instance, Lucky Lindbergh, who flew across the ocean back in I'm not sure it was 27 or whatever. And he didn't want us going to war, but he was also German, I believe, and he didn't want us fighting the Germans. And there was a big contingent of Americans that were very, very pro-Hitler back in those days as well. So it was just interesting how maybe, who knows, who's to say, whether they let it happen so that we could then get everybody all fired up, and then we could all, all the men would enlist, and they did. And the rest was history. They declared war the next day. The famous speech of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, in the House, in the Congress, in the House of Representatives, a day that will live in infamy. I think we all remember that speech. But if we go to the next slide, this is something that I found really, really interesting, because, being a kind of a journalism buff myself, it was a major in college for journalism. This was this is the cover page of the San Francisco Examiner on the day of December 7th. Now, obviously, it's kind of hard to read, and maybe if you're watching this on YouTube at some point, you could maybe enlarge it. But some of the stories that are there, I mean, it's like the type style is so condensed. Everything is just compacted into this like a broadsheet almost kind of style. Back in the old days, where they just and the town crier would have have the newspaper, it would just be one page, and they called it a broadsheet because it was a broad piece of paper with all these little stories on it. You didn't page through, and make your way to the comic section, the sports section. There was no sports section back then. But all these stories, it's like all these little things, and a lot of them are talking about the war in Europe, and also the Russians. The Russians were advancing on basically all the areas that they wanted to take over as their part of the conquest. Russia signed a deal with Hitler, as you may remember, the early part of World War II, that allowed Russia to basically take over the Soviet Union. It was the U.S.S.R. at that point. They were taking over all these small little satellite countries that eventually became the larger U.S.S.R. But that was the deal that Stalin cut with Hitler before Hitler did the old double cross and invaded Russia. Probably what lost them the war, if many people think. Two-front war, and Russia just overwhelmed them with just manpower. So, but I digress. So that was something that was really interesting to read, because all the little stories talking about issues with even Japan at the time. They're talking about some of the issues about natural resources and assets being seized. Boy, doesn't that sound familiar? That they were seizing the assets of Japan and all the banks. So that kind of sounds a little bit like 2022-ish, a little bit. So jumping from there, there's the first video. I'm going to just have Miles play here, and hopefully we'll have the audio turned up. We can hear the audio on that. I have a thing or two that I say on it, but see if we can hear this video. just kind of, it's one of the placards outside by the shoreline that people, that before you get on the boat, that you can look at. It's kind of a something that I found really, really curious, because it's kind of like it shows the events of the day and how they transpired. Here it comes.
Here's a kind of breakdown of how it went down. The first attack happened at 7:47 a.m. And the second wave came an hour later.
Yeah, that's pretty much it on that. But yeah, and there's kind of a picture of the ships that were attacked there. You can see them. Yeah, you just, I guess, if you're old enough, like if you're a boomer like me, we've grown up our whole lives. We've known about these things. Yeah, we could take that down, Miles, before we go to the next one. So it was really kind of cool, just because, seeing the sequence and how you figure after that first wave came through and everybody's just utterly just shocked and people are running. Everyone's trying to run to their positions, get planes up in the air to try to counteract, the bombers that were coming. And the fact that, an hour later, another wave came, and maybe they were a little bit more prepared for them, but still the attacks that happened in the first wave, I mean, they were devastating. In fact, before we went out on the ship, which we go into a small theater, probably about, let's say 50 of us, about 50 people get to go in each boat ride. And he gave us the park ranger gave us a very interesting little presentation where talked about how the ship, the Arizona specifically, did not get hit by a torpedo. Now, if you remember watching some of the movies, like, Tora, 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 a very famous movie in the early 70s, shows the attack on Pearl Harbor. One of the best movies ever made, honestly. How they pulled that off back then without CGI, just amazing cinematography. But they show a lot of the planes that flew in to Pearl Harbor from the Japanese were dropping torpedoes that then they would take off and they'd come back and do another run or bombing run, or whether they were shooting their machine guns, to just strafing people, killing people on the shore. But what actually blew up or took down or sank the Arizona was a very, very strategically placed bomb that fell from a plane that they had done massive amount of homework on the U.S. fleet. And they knew there was a vulnerable point, a choke point on the battleships where the 14-inch guns that were on the, I believe on the front of the ship, where down below was where all the ammunition and the powder kegs, or whatever, all the shells were stored about three floors down in the bottom of the ship, thinking that they'd be safe from attack. But the Japanese invented or devised a bomb that would go through three levels of the ship. It would tear through and then detonate once it hit the bottom. So according to the Ranger, what happened was the bomb came through, blew up the ammunition load in the bottom of the ship. That blast was so powerful that it instantly killed about 1,000 Navy and Marine soldiers. It happened within, they were all lost within probably seconds. That's how fast it just went. It came in, blew them out. They were all, many of them were, God knows the shape they were in, dealing with that blast. But that all these brave soldiers, sailors, and Marines were all age 18, 19, 20. They said there were some that were as young as 15 or 16 that lied and snuck into the military, and they were killed instantly. And the number is in like an 11 to 1200, I believe, somewhere in that neighborhood of souls that were lost that day. And they are permanently entombed in the body of the ship, and they'll never to be recovered. It's just a permanent grave site, permanent memorial. And I took a little video of our trip on the boat. It's kind of a very poignant ride. I'd like to have Miles show us the ride there. So what's happening here is the boat is leveling off, and we're coming in for basically a horizontal mooring onto the deck there, and as you can see, that iconic memorial that we've grown up our whole lives, right, watching, and especially every December 7th when they commemorate, this event. We've all seen that, but it really is something to step onto it and walk onto it for the first, and actually be there. I guess it's something I wouldn't necessarily say this has been on my bucket list, but I'm so glad that I went, having done it now, because it really affected me. I mean, I took my cap off, as soon as I got onto the dock there. I'm not surprised a few of the men that were with me. There was probably about 8 or 9 other men, and they didn't take their hats off. And it's interesting because I thought that was kind of something you would do as a given. But anyway, that's another podcast, right? So while on there, I took a picture of a guy, and they didn't discourage us from taking pictures. This will be slide number 6, Miles. They just said just to be respectful, be tasteful, and also please speak in whispers. And this picture here is a picture of, now remember, the memorial is strewn across, like perpendicular, side to side, across the ship. The ship is permanently, at the bottom of the harbor there. That's one of the smokestacks. That's one of the exhaust, I guess say chimneys, that was on the ship, and that's permanently exposed above the waterline. And this gentleman here, I didn't speak to him. I can only assume that what thoughts are going through his head. Maybe he had a grandfather, because he's a younger guy. Looks like a guy maybe in his 30s. Maybe his grandfather was on the ship that fateful day. But you could see he's kind of deep in thought, deep in prayer. He stood there kind of transfixed, looking down. Like, imagine a lot of people are feeling the same way, like they're witnessing history. It's all kind of washing over you, and you can't help but feel moved by it all. So, in the last picture that we took, that would be a picture number 7. I felt, this is something that I definitely felt I wanted people to kind of get a sense of seeing this, because it really showed you what America really was at the time. And you see all those names, and it's mostly Navy sailors, but there's an area in the lower right which showed all the Marines. It was about I believe about 150 Marines also lost their lives. I know the Marines are now a division of the Navy, but so they actually had a separate section for the Marines versus the sailors. But looking on the list there, it's just seeing all the names, and the cross section of America, and you see the usual Smiths and the Joneses, and you see a lot of names that are like sort of a German descent, things that you might see that probably a Jewish descent, based on names we know is kind commonly known as Jewish last surnames, and a lot of other names, and just seeing all the cross section of humanity from all the country. Whoever, it's funny, whoever got sent to Pearl Harbor was probably thinking, boy, I won the lottery, right? I mean, of all places to serve. I mean, versus like being on a ship in, I don't know, Port of Newark, New Jersey, or something, or somewhere else, you could be in somewhere up in New England or in the cold winters. And here you are in beautiful tropical Hawaii, living the lifestyle. And then this happened, right? So you never know. You never know. But that was a very quiet room. The people just standing there. A lot of them, and I can't help but think, how many people in that room were there to look up the names of their relatives? That probably happens every day. Probably some descendant. You think about, these were how many generations passed over this? 3 generations now. So these are like great grandchildren, grandchildren that are like in their middle or towards the end of their lives, even, and also something that was brought up by the ranger about all these sailors here that had young kids at home, and that their kids grew up never seeing their father from this day forward, and how that struck a lot of us sitting there. It's been so many years, you don't get necessarily emotional, but it does move you. We come away from, you feel different about a lot of things. You feel different. I think you feel different about war. You figure, my takeaway was, why is war always the solution? Why is that always the answer? Why can't people just find a way to work together, find common interests, and not always turn to our worst base instincts of just blowing each other up? And here we are, 2026, and things sadly have not changed much, have they? And we're in the midst of all these conflicts now that we don't know where this is going. Can anybody say with certainty 90 days from now that things are going to be calmer, toned down, whether in Ukraine and Russia, or what's going on with Iran and our country and all the other countries around there that are being impacted, and how it's going to affect our lives here? It's a big question mark. But again, it's good to, I guess, touch back and look at our history and see what's transpired. Try to take something away from it, learn a little bit. There's a lot of people here of Asian descent, and you never know whether they're people that had relatives around the other side that day. It's hard to, you don't want to get jingoistic here, but you realize we're an open and free society here, and anybody can come and look at this. And to the government's credit, they don't charge you for the boat ride to walk through the exhibits. You don't pay anything. It's absolutely free, and you don't even pay for parking, which is nice. Because honestly, when you're in Hawaii, getting something for free is a novelty. Okay. So after we did the Pearl experience, we went to do something that I hadn't done in a lot of years. And when I was here back in 81 with expat Doug and another guy, we went as one of our things to do. We had a week to kill. We went to visit the Dole plantation. It was a lot different than it is today. And it's crazy because, wow, then you could just waltz on, not pay anything, just walk around the fields. I mean, you couldn't like help yourself to pineapples, but you could basically walk up and down and see the things growing right there. And I have a picture of me, a lot skinnier, a lot more hair on my head. It's squatting down next to a couple of pineapples. I still have the picture. Actually, I have it in my drawer at home. Maybe I'll show it. We went to the Dole plantation yesterday, and it's very different than it was all these years ago, 40 something years ago. It's and happy to say that apparently they're actually bringing back the planting, and they're going to be growing a lot of stuff here, because apparently a lot of the pineapple production had moved to Lanai. Joseph Dole, James Dole, not Bob Dole, the James Dole, the founder, um, was growing all the pineapples on Lanai, and then Larry Ellison bought it. And then before that, all the pineapples went to the Philippines and other places. But I think they're bringing back a lot of that production to the U.S. here, because they planted a ton of field. Just going, well, we have a little a video here that Miles is going to play here, showing called the Pineapple Express. Little engine that could. So there it is. Cute little train. I guess I got about 3 or 4 of them, and they set up all these train tracks throughout the whole plantation, and people load up at $15 a head for a train. Takes on about a 15-minute train ride, and takes you through all the different fields and some of the different varieties of not just pineapples, but all these other things that apparently they're growing there on the grounds of the plantation. So they're bringing it back, and then it's a big commercialized like gift store. It sprawls. It's like going to a Buc-ee's. If you know Buc-ee's, it'd be like Buc-ee's, but it's all about Buc-ee's with pineapple everywhere, candies and shirts and all kinds of memorabilia about the trip. So I guess for someone who's never been here before, it's definitely a destination to go see because it's such a famous company. So that was kind of neat. And then our afternoon, we went to another interesting tourist destination, and that'll be our last video that we'll show. That is of Waimea Falls, and if we'll show that one real quick. Very distinctive. Okay, this was a half-hour walk up the hill. And there are actually people swimming in the base of the falls there. And there's a little bleacher set up so people come up there with their towels and they jump in and get a nice refreshing dip in the falls there. And then they, towel off and walk back down. It's about about a half-hour walk up a very, very gentle grade with a nice canopy of tree cover. I mean, it was really comfortable. We're boomers. We're older. My wife and my sister-in-law and brother-in-law, we made the walk, and a little bit of a workout, but we got up and down, but it was comfortable. We got back in the car, and then we did another tour, which I'm not going to talk about. We don't have time for that. But just in general, it was just a very, very enjoyable day. And it really is paradise, really, when you come here. I mean, the scenery is amazing. The colors, if you like the color green, all the various shades of green, Hawaii is your place. It's really amazing. And honestly, I thought this time of year it would be swelteringly hot. We're in the middle of summer. It's just beautiful. It's like in the mid 80s, and there's ocean breezes. I'm sitting here and there's a steady breeze here. It's not, in the morning, it's cool. It's in the 70s. And with the breeze, I mean, it's like having air conditioning outside. So it's really amazing. But great time to come here. I mean, it looks like, just based on what I can tell, the population of the islands are up to almost 1.5 million. Minimum wage here, for anyone who's curious, is $16 an hour, one of the highest in the country. And cost of living is high. Another factoid. Kilowatt hour, 46 to 47 cents per kilowatt, which is roughly 4 times what I pay in Ohio. So that's crazy high. But beyond that, I mean, property taxes are amongst the lowest on a per percentage basis of any state in the union. Shocked me. The other thing was the state income taxes are, I think, in the top 4 for the highest, with 12 different tax brackets that start from $1, no exemption of any income. So there's, it's pluses and minuses. But if you can afford to live here and you can, make your payments, put food on the table, you got to enjoy this every day of your life. I tell you, it's a compelling case to be made to want to live here or have a place here if you can afford it. I can't, not yet, probably not ever, but I can come here every once in a while, due to the good graces of and generosity of people I know. Well, anyway, so that's today's podcast. Just wanted to run that. I wanted to chime in from here. And for the ones that'll see this on YouTube can enjoy the scenery behind me and some of the videos and pictures that I posted. Apologize for those that listen on the audio side. But thank you for following us there. And thank you for the increase in downloads. Appreciate people, liking the podcast and downloading multiple episodes, because I know that they are. I see it in analytics. And people that have subscribed on YouTube, thank you as well. And thank you for supporting our advertisers. Now, this guy, as you can see there for the YouTube people, that's my shirt from Miles Franklin, Andy Checkman, who I'm just disappointed to announce that he was supposed to be on Patrick Bet-David today, and they pushed him in August. So he got rescheduled. So my plan was to wake up at 3 a.m. and watch him live with Patrick Bet-David and his panel. But we'll do that East Coast time next month. So thanks again, everybody, for tuning in. Thanks, Miles Mendez, for doing a great job with all the posting of the videos and the pics. He was on his game today, big time. So thanks, everybody. And next time, I'm sure Phil will be with us. Phil couldn't make it today. It was a scheduling thing. Otherwise, Phil would have been on the podcast. But thanks, everybody, again, and we'll see you next week.
Hunter's Blend Coffee, premium coffee for freedom-loving Americans. Many coffee importers view the world very differently than you do and would support lobbyists that fight against the Second Amendment, hunting, and our God-given freedoms. No matter where you buy your coffee or who roasts it, someone had to import the green coffee beans. Well, we are the coffee buyer, importer, and roaster. So from the farmer to your mug, you can feel confident that your morning coffee has been safely in the hands of patriots. Hunter's Blend Coffee.